Welcome to this tutorial on buttons. In this video we'll be exploring all of the buttons that are provided as part of Theme 2. We'll use the example dashboard here as our reference point, as most of the buttons provided with this theme are displayed here. Next, I'll open up my palette and I'll show you where you can find these action buttons. Starting at the top of our dashboard, we have our primary control buttons. These are available here in the button section of your Theme 2. These provide the main navigation for your application. Next, we have the secondary controls. And these provide Windows controls such as closing, maybe a home screen or some administration options, and these can be found here in the palette. Just below, we have a circular button with a chevron inside it. This is what we refer to as our Go button, or our small action button, and this can be found here in the palette. We provided these filter buttons that consist of an icon, a label, and a numeric value at the end which shows how many records will be returned when you use this filter. Now you will need to set the filters up yourself, but the main construction of these is provided in your buttons in Theme 2. We've provided field action buttons for tasks such as email and Skype calls. These are buttons that are embedded in a field, and when they're clicked, they will trigger an action. If we lock our dashboard, we'll see that this button is set to open up Outlook and use the content of this field to generate an email. We've also included a binary toggle button that when clicked will change colour. This can be used to show or hide content on a page, or maybe set a value. Next, we have our action buttons. Down here we can see we have a new and update button as well as a delete button. These are referred to as our CRUD buttons, and they have associated to them conditional formatting that shows and hides them depending on what's been displayed on the screen. So for example, we've got a record selected here, so we're able to update it or delete it. If we had no record selected, we'd be able to insert a record. These buttons can be found here in the palette. We'll now move to the dashboard splash screen. Here we can see the example of our splash screen buttons, and this can be found here in the palette. To add more buttons to our splash screen, we can simply unlock our dashboard, drag a new splash screen button, holding Shift onto this area. Next, we'll look at the pop-out window, and for this we'll open up the example pop-out dashboard. Here we have one additional type of button, which is the ribbon type Windows control, and that can be found here in the palette. We also have a slightly different style for the footer, as this pop-out window has a self-contained footer that sits outside a tile, and that can be found here in the palette. So now let's look at making some basic alterations to our buttons. There are two mechanisms for updating the icons on our buttons. The first is at the object level, which means we only impact that object that we're working on, and the second is the global level, and that means anything that's using a particular style or icon will be updated. So let's see that in action. Here we've got an example dashboard, and I have a grey icon next to my static dynamic text. I can upload an icon or add an image, and now that I've saved that, you can see that the icon has been overridden. However, this will only impact this dashboard and that particular item on it. Next, we'll look at the global level, and we'll discuss this topic in more detail in our updating and overriding themes tutorial. Here, I can select an icon, move across to my styles, and under shared styles, we'll see we've got default icon. Again, I can add an icon, and we can see everywhere that default icon was used has been updated. So that's the difference. Typically you'll use the global update if you want to update the default icon, or maybe you want a different home button like we have here. However, if you're dealing at the dashboard level, you'll probably just want to update icons as you go. In this final part of the video, we'll look at the pre-configured footer buttons. First of all, we have our internal tile CRUD buttons, and these can be added to a tile, So here I'm going to move my palette across, find my tile in the Explorer, and I'm going to add in my crud buttons to my tile. And as we can see, these have been added into the tile at the base. The other type of footer buttons that we have sit externally from a tile, so these can be at a page level. To add these, I'll add them to my main form and they'll sit right at the bottom of the window. I hope you found this tutorial on buttons useful. If you'd like to find out more about the theme and how you can edit it, please look at the updating and overriding theme styles video for more details.